Mia, going back to where the bees are, I've got a question about government and how you go about finding out what government has in terms of plans for the region that you're looking at. Is it internet? Do you talk to the council? Do you talk to the state government? How do you go about finding some of that information? Because sometimes governments are a little unlikely to give away all the things that they have planned for an area, but you must have a way of gathering that particular information because it's very important, isn't it?
It is important. And I've probably found that you're right in some cases that the government doesn't give all their secrets away, but quite often, possibly just ahead of an election. So we're coming up to state elections,
Yes,
coming
we
up to
are.
regional elections. So sometimes in the 4 weeks preceding an election, you hear all the promises of how bright the future is going to be. And that's when the government opens the books and says, oh, we're planning to spend 15 billion here and 16 trillion there. Not 16 trillion. I'm exaggerating there a little bit, but it is an open book just before elections. Now, the catch is that it's until the ground is broken and they've started the project,
Yes.
all of that is
a
decision, a conversation with the community. We've had in Oberon, when I was in Sydney, I received an email because I'm logged into different sources. So when something happens within a township that I'm looking at, I get an automatic email. There was a town hall meeting, meaning that the government told the community that they're going to have a discussion about an upcoming project. And this was a very large UK-based company that wanted to invest in Oberon and bring the digital system that includes a computerized greenhouse that they use successfully in the UK into Oberon. So the good thing about Oberon being that high elevation off sea level is that you do get more consistent days, as meaning that when you work out the sunshine that hits Oberon, because it's above certain cloud cover, because you have less interference from smog, you get less, you do get more rain, you do get more cold, but you also get more daylight hours. So there are numbers that they crunched and said, we can build, buy, manufacture and supply a very large piece of land. And from that feed Sydney and feed Bathurst, so the east and the west, from that little area, as well as have enough for export. And the town hall meeting estimated $240 million that the project was worth.
Gosh.
Not bad for a town of around 6,000 people. So they had a very big town hall meeting. They had 3 discussions. And from the mayor's perspective, from the government's perspective, it throws light on Oberon, meaning that they bring more visitors in during holiday season. There's more tourists coming in. There's more visibility of what Oberon is contributing to, from a hardware point of view, to Bunnings Warehouse, for example, from a farming and a factory and a quarry point of view to construction, from the timber trusses. So all the 500 different companies, 100 different companies that were in Oberon got a little boost out of being in the news for a positive thing. But the citizens voted against it. So at the end of the day, the people living in Oberon read all these plans and said, this is a major development. And somewhere along the line, there was disagreement. And so the plan just didn't go ahead. And that happens everywhere in Australia. So the local government tells you something's coming up, and you do find out about it when you're logged into the right kind of websites, newsletters, email accounts. But until the ground is broken, don't put money against it. Don't bet on it until you can see that the government's actually started the job. That's happened in Western Australia as well, in Port Hedland. Port Hedland was a place that I was investing in. The local government put through a paper suggesting the marina upgrade. And it was they were building a resort, a marina. It had accommodation. It had a caravan park attached. I believe it was a $30 million job, but that's nothing. It's just a start. But from that, there was a much larger project attached over a 10-year period. A few things happened with the Port Hedland job, which meant that the wind cycle was blowing dust in the wrong direction. And so for them to get final approval after all the environmental studies, some of the residents that were living within the area had to move and change the area to be commercial only, not residential and commercial. The other way was to close some of the commercial facilities that were causing the dust and completely change the landscape. Everything's expensive, but it's not just the price. It's also the community consideration, and the community gets a vote.
Yes.
So the people that are paying their rates to that council each have a vote of should we go ahead or not go ahead. So until the job has begun and the government has invested enough to show that they're doing the work on it, you can't count on a project. A big one in Sydney is Badgerys Creek. So there's an airport that's been discussed for 50 years to build in Western Sydney. 10 years ago, it was agreed on which part and how large. And then every 5 years, we're getting an update to see how it's progressing along. But before 2030, we're still not going to see any planes moving in and out of it. And it's 2021 now. So, that's, yes, it makes sense in the future, but how far into the future? Now, the Olympic Games. So when Sydney got the Olympic Games in 2000, there was a lot of construction that happened between 2018 and 2020. Some construction started much earlier because they announced the games many years before they happened. But the big push happened in the last 2 years. Now, Queensland is getting the Olympics in.
Yes.
Yeah, you've heard of that?
And they're already talking about it, yes.
So
constantly talking about it.
Exactly. So people are talking about how that's going to affect real estate prices, which suburb is going to be the best suburb. The Olympics are an event that lasts for less than 6 months. So it might be just a 4-week ceremony, and there might be tourists a month before and a month after. That's a 3-month period. The advertising will happen probably 2 months before the Olympics and probably 1 month after. So altogether, you're looking at a 6-month blip on the radar, a 6-month period where you're going to get a lot of people coming and construction finishing, because construction happening isn't fun to watch, but when it's all finished, it's great. So there'll be that beautiful 6-month period in 2036 where things are going to be the best of the best that you've seen for decades in Queensland. But what happens before and what happens after? How much work is going to go into roads being blocked off, construction, etc., that'll slow traffic down 2 years before the Olympics? Because for big projects, there's sometimes a lot of demolition that happens. Sometimes it's a road widening. But at any stage that it happens, there's always something associated with it, but people put up with it knowing, oh yeah, we're doing this because in 2 years' time, that's our deadline. We know it's going to be finished. So they realize it's not a forever game, and they're okay to put up with it for a while. But when you're doing your maths and when you're researching, it's worthwhile to know what's going to be a long-term play and what's just a flash in the pan. What is going to be just once off, and how long will that result last financially for you? Can you push your rents up during those times? Or is it the fact that when the Olympics are coming, people won't want to rent your house because they know the whole street will be crowded for that 1 month period? So it's a very interesting calculation. I hate the word interesting. You say interesting and it's so vague, but it's quite an in-depth and varied computational calculation. So you need to think about why you're investing and what's the long-term play.